Hey, welcome to the channel, Dakota Starry Nights. We got a review here that we're going to do for y'all, and this is on an iOptron MAK 150. So why the iOptron? There's a couple of reasons. One is that I couldn't find any reviews on the iOptron on YouTube, surprisingly. There are plenty on the Skywatcher, but really nothing on the iOptron. The other reason is I intend to do some astrophotography for cherry picking at a long focal length different pieces of nebulosity, targets that I had visited in the past in wide field, and now I'd like to get in there and do some more imaging, but on selected aspects of the nebulosity. So the iOptron, being a RUM-MAK type Moxitovian Cassegrain, that's a mouthful, has the advantage of putting out a flatter field. Now the RUM-MAK Moxitov, it's a more sophisticated design. The RUM-MAK secondary mirror is distinct and separate from the corrector lens. So the optic designer has more freedom to enhance the performance. So typically, for the same focal length, a RUM-MAK Moxitov has a flatter field and tighter stars when compared to a Gregory Moxitov, like the Skywatcher and the Orion and the Celestrons. This makes the RUM-MAK Moxitov especially good choice for astrophotography. So most of the Moxitovs today available are Gregory Moxitovs, where the secondary mirror is a simple aluminum circle. Essentially, they just glue it onto the interior surface of the corrector lens. And therefore, the curvature of the secondary mirror is always the same as the curvature of the corrector lens. From an optical design perspective, it's a compromise, but it does enable high contrast Moxitov optics to be manufactured at lower prices. So it's really about trying to get the price down, which is why most of them are Gregory Maks. So the iOptron is really the only one that I could find within a reasonable price that has this RUM-MAK lens assembly. And it's also the only one that I saw that has a 2-speed focuser, which is pretty cool. So we got this foam here, and it looks like it's packed really well. And here's the finder scope. So here's the MAK. First impression? Yeah. It's pretty nice. It's a little longer than I thought it was going to be. The other nice thing is that it is 1,800 millimeter focal length, whereas some of the other MAKs, like when you get into the 8-inch, they go over 2,000. And the same thing with the Schmidt Cassegrains. I don't want to go that far in focal length because it kind of locks you in. Whereas I think this 1800 is kind of the sweet spot for me. If you want to do planetary imaging, you could just put a 2x PowerMate, or what I've been finding having a lot of fun with, a better 8x24 zoom. And you'd have plenty of power here. And the focal length is going to mean that it's going to be easier to guide. So let's pull this out. And here's the finder scope. The paint finish on this is pretty nice. It's sort of like a pebble white. Probably won't be using this, but it does come with it. Now this is the Vixen plate it comes with. Okay, so here's something you might find interesting. On the Vixen dovetail, they have 2 Allen head screws equally spaced from either end. And the only reason I think that they would do that is in order to keep the scope from sliding out of the saddle if it happens to be loose. But that means that you have to be clamping right in between those 2 Allen head screws. I want to be able to move it up and down the Vixen dovetail, as short as it is, in order to achieve balance. So I'll be pulling those out. Yeah, that's the dew shield. And it's the only one that comes with a dew shield. Now these currently are going for under $1,000. This looks really well made, guys. This really does. Wow. A nice pebble finish on that. So it's really nicely boxed. Yeah, that looks really nice. Woo! So it does come with a scat thread adapter. Now here, this is 2-inch, okay, so it's ready for a 2-inch star diagonal. And this fitting here, this looks like a T adapter, is what that is. That's a T adapter. These are caps that cover the collimation to collimate it. And here's that 2-speed focuser. Here is the scat adapter that will go over this. If you remove this, this will put on, and this gives you standard scat threads. Let's see. Yeah, that's a brass ring in there, guys. You're not just getting the screw going on the side of your diagonal, marring it up. This looks like bronze instead of brass. I was hoping that it would be that. It has off access for solar work, and this is plastic. It just pops on or pops off. Okay, so there's the corrector, and you know, looking at it, you can definitely see it's different than a conventional MAK. A conventional MAK, you just see this shiny kind of like convex reflector on there, but this actually has this spot, and then there is a housing that's about that long. And so that is definitely different than your typical Moxitove. The inside looks pretty good. It's nice and flat. I do see the mirror is shining on the side of the walls. I'm sure if a guy was to flock that, it would help. The corrector lens looks pretty thick from what I can tell, and they tend to be thick and front heavy. But if you're going to image, that's actually a good thing, because that will counteract your camera, filter wheel, rotator, and that kind of thing. It feels pretty hefty. The nice thing though, it is compact. I'm hoping that having it more compact will allow it to guide well. So now to put the dew shield on, it has some dimples right there, and this is felt lined. And then there are some notches right here. So it's not like a jar thread. It's just got some notches here. Probably be good to put a little black magic marker node there, so you know exactly where that little node is. And let's see. That is a snug fit. I'm not so sure you'd want to be taking that on and off on a regular basis. So that's one thing we've discovered. Yeah, it's really snug. Okay guys, I got it on, and the way I did it was that I got it lifted up nice and solid, and I got to put something here to let me know which way to turn this thing once it's in there. So this is rather snug. This could come in handy if I find that I'm getting too much downward momentum from the camera package that may be back here. That would be a slick way to add some weight to the front to balance it out in deck. So that might help. Otherwise, what I'm probably going to wind up using is this. And this is something I made, and it's got plenty of adjustment into it. It looks great, and it's great that you get it. And it gives you that option to use it if you so desire. But it is going to add extra weight to the package, and if you're looking to save weight, then you're probably better off with something like this. If you need the deck weight, then add this to it, and that'll give you deck weight as well. That was the second time I put it in, and it was a little easier than the first, and I guess in time it'll kind of get broken in, but for the moment it's difficult to get it on and off. Alright, now some information you might find useful is what is the diameter of the OTA if you're thinking about possibly replacing the Vixen dovetail with rings. To answer that question, it is 172 millimeters in diameter. The other thing I found that's kind of interesting, this is pretty thick. It is definitely thicker than what I've seen on these Schmidt-Cassegrain and different bodies of this type. This is coming in at 4 millimeters. In English terms, that is 5/16. That's pretty thick. That might help you when you're trying to decide if you're going to get rings and how thick that really is. The multi-coated and fully baffled optics provides an almost similar result as a 5-inch achrochromatic refractor. When they say baffled tube, what they're referring to, and get this off, isn't this part of the tube, but there is a center tube that once the light comes through the corrector, hits the primary, comes back up to this secondary, it goes down a tube, and it's that tube that's baffled. This itself is not baffled, okay? These things are great for planets and the moon. They absolutely rock. And for some of the brightest star clusters, they're great for that. And if you're into splitting doubles and that kind of thing, they're pretty good for that. But as far as wide field images or faint nebulosity or faint galaxies, this is not the instrument you want, because that long focal length means that you're really looking at a small section of the sky, and the views can be pretty dark with this. So you really need brighter objects to work this. Now, if you're going to image, of course, that gives you a little more reach, because now you're doing a long exposure. That about sums that up. The next thing to do is to do a collimation test to see if it's collimated or not, and then run some eyepieces and take a look at some deep sky objects. I'm here right now because the yard is full of snow, and it's like, this deep. So this is a little kind of a cubby hole that I got here to work with this. So, okay, so I've got it hooked up on a Sky T2 Altaz mount. So the seeing tonight is below average, transparency is below average. It's -1 degree, guys. It's pretty cold. And I've had this out here for about 10 minutes, and it probably could use about another good 20 minutes in order to acclimate properly. I've got a Teleview Panoptic 35, which at 1800 gives me about 51 power and change. It presents a nice package. It doesn't phase the Sky T at all. I have the dew shield on, and it was easier to put it on the third time than it was that first time. I think it's that felt is kind of tight when you first put it on, but the way they packed it, it got here nice and collimated out of the factory, so pretty happy about that. The focuser works really nice. I got gloves on, and I'm able to dial it right in there. And it's definitely just in the last 10 minutes has gotten looking better. I think part of the problem that people have with these is that they're not used to the long acclimation time that they take, and they get disappointed. And so really, if you're looking for a grab and go setup, this ain't it, because this is just going to take you too long to acclimate. It's best to store it outside if you have a garage or a shed or something. Contrast is starting to improve. In the beginning, I could barely make out the equatorial belts, but now they're starting to come into play as the optics cool down. I think before I push it anymore, though, I'm going to leave it out for about another 20 minutes or so. Okay, so I'm going to warm up a little bit, and then we'll come back. See you in a bit. Okay, so we got some good news. It warmed up a little bit. It's went from -1 to 0 degrees. Right. So I've got a 17 Delos in there, which is giving us about 106 power. I'm not expecting a lot tonight. This has been out for about 30 minutes, okay. But I don't think this sky can support this 100 power. Of course, the imaging, you can get that lucky imaging going on and catch a few fleeting moments of good seeing, but it's a basic view, nothing to write home about. I wouldn't say it's a product of the MAK, it's a product of the seeing. Sort of in the sweet spot. Oh yeah, it's much better than it was earlier when I first brought it out. See, it's good enough now to where it can handle the 50. In the beginning, the 50 was blurred, but now that it's been acclimating, it looks better. Right now, though, Jupiter is clean. Nice contrast, really nice. Refractor-like, definitely. It definitely takes a while for this thing to get ready, but when it does, it's ready. Hey. Nice. Nice. The key, give her 30 minutes minimum, and depending on what the temperature shift is between where you've stored it and outside, and I'd say I'd go 45, and if you can, an hour, really. And yeah, okay, so that's going to wrap this part up. Next thing is going to be, we'll do some imaging with it with a Planetary cam. I picked up a ZWO 585, and it hasn't even had first light yet, and so it'll be first light in here. So we'll be back, and for that we'll be in the pod. Alright, so we're in the pod, and we got a real windy day here. It is just blowing around like the dickens. And we're going to try to capture Jupiter. I have it in the iOptron 150 MAK with the ASI 585 ZWO. So let's come over to the laptop and check it out. Okay guys, so here we've got Jupiter way out of focus, pulled out with the 585, and you could see the collimation is pretty right on. I will tell you this, it's really windy out here tonight, so you're going to be hearing some breezes and this, that, and the other thing. But let's get this into focus. Yep, the other way. There you go. That's better. Okay. Yeah, you could see though that she really jumping around. You know, normally I wouldn't even bother being out, but it's weather's been to the point to where you got to grab whatever you can get. So I have this just straight in the MAK. I don't have any power made or anything like that. It's just native. I'm gonna grab a couple of those. Let's see what it'll do. So let's do that with a region of interest. So we'll right click. Okay, let's go for that. Let's try for 1,000 frames and see the difference. Yeah, whoa. First time I'm using a color cam for Planetary. I usually use the 174. Okay, it finished that. Okay, we're going to stop it. Stop. Okay guys, we're going to give Mars a shot. It's over on the east here, just below the Pleiades. There it goes. Okay, so here we are. We got Mars in the iOptron. Little kind of jumping around, but it's there. And let's do a region of interest. Let's open this up so we can really get a good look here. So let's do a region of interest. We're going to right click on this, and let's grab Let's grab 2,000 frames. What do you say? Here we go. This USB 3.0 with this cam is pretty amazing. It already grabbed it. That's just nuts. So fast. Now this is native right through the MAK at 1800 focal length. All right. Yeah, that camera's a screamer. Okay. Alright folks, we finally got a clear night. I've been waiting almost 2 weeks. Got the moon up. It's going to be kind of bright, almost full, but not quite. It's over on the east side. I've got Jupiter right almost at zenith on the meridian, and got Mars over here above the moon. Alright, 1800 focal length, and I've got a QHY 268 monochrome cam with a filter wheel and hydrogen alpha, O3, and S2. We're probably just going to do HA tonight for this demonstration. I've got a Moxitove SkyMax 90 that I'm using as a guide scope. That's 1250, I believe, focal length, with a ZWO 174 ASI mono. So that's going to give us some nice guiding. Okay, so let's jump over to computer. What do you say? Let's send this over to the simple sequencer. Okay, so let's do HA. Let's try a 300 second sub, and we're going to do one of those, and then we're going to do a 10 and see the difference. So let's do a 600 second here, and we're going to initiate this now. And of course we know that. Okay, so this is plate solving and, you know, moving its way around there, and when we get the first 5-minute sub to come in, it's already starting to guide. I'll turn the camera back on. See you in a bit. Okay guys, so here's our guiding out of the gate. You gotta love that. I mean, you really gotta love that. It's like under half an arc second. It looks to me like these two guys are two peas in a pod. This is a great match. There's something about some scopes, the way they made up with a mount, that just makes them a killer combination. This is pretty good. I know it's not the image, but like, after all, this is part of the deal, right? How does this thing ride in this scope? So I'm thinking if you have a Skywatcher EQ6, because that's about the equivalent payload wise as this AZ EQ, if you're dialed in on the pole and all this other good stuff and balance and everything, you should be able to get some kind of guiding like this, in theory, right? Let's see what Nina's up to. Here we've got NGC 6888, the Crescent Nebula in Cygnus, and this is a 5-minute sub. Now let's zoom in here, and we're getting some nice separation with this double stars here. The half flux radius is 2.87, so we're 8 minutes into a 10-minute sub. Well, while we're waiting for that, let's look at see if there's any aberrations here in the corners. And if you look, guys, this looks pretty good. These stars are nice and round. I don't see any coma. This is what's nice about the iOptron RumMAK Moxitove. It presents a flatter field than the Gregory MAKs because the secondary is not tied into the corrector plate, and so they can get better correction, and that looks really good. So we're almost here into this 10-minute sub. 5 more seconds. And there it is. Cool. Yeah, definitely brighter. Definitely. If you look here, we're getting some wisp here of nebulosity that we didn't get on that 5. And we're still splitting that double there. I got a little bit of distortion there, if you look. probably due to this down in here where it went kind of south here on the deck. I believe that had to do with me moving around in the chair. So now if we look here in the corners, we're getting a little bit of vignetting. This is a C-crop sensor. Flats would definitely take care of that in a heartbeat. Once this comes in, that'll take care of that, and then we'll stack 25 minutes. Okay, so that's the 5 right there. Okay, and then that's a 10. Okay, so we finished up with NGC 6888. We did a 5-minute sub and 2 10-minute subs. And so this is what we came up with. Now this is right out of the can, no spices or anything, you know, no darks, no flats or nothing. And this is what we got there. And keep in mind the transparency is just average, and we have below average seeing. Not the greatest kind of skies to be imaging in, but it is what it is. It's January, so we're just take whatever we can get at this point. So now I've slewed the scope over to the moon, and we're going to do some imaging there, grab 2,000 frames with the ZWO 585 color cam and see what that'll produce for us. So let's jump over to the computer. So that's about 112 power Tycho, and the seeing is below average. Well, let's drop the CQ mod down. And let's capture 1,000 frames here. What do you say? Here we go. Yeah. 112 power. Don't know how much more you can push it on a night like tonight, but see what we can do. Okay. That might make a pretty nice image, actually. Okay, got it. Alright fellas, that's going to wrap it up for this review. I certainly hope you found it useful. It's been quite an adventure overall. I think it's a pretty good scope. It's going to certainly suit my needs for the different reasons I stated. Focal length, I like the 2-speed focuser, the compact package, and the aperture too, and the price was right. So if you're thinking about a MAK, you might want to give this one a look. You can go to iOptron and look at the specs, parameters to consider. So until next time, thanks for tuning into the channel, and hey, y'all stay safe and Happy New Year.